The veil falls. High Admiral Korthax stood motionless on the command deck of the Dominion's flagship, the inevitable Conquest. His four arms remained perfectly still as he observed the blue planet rotating slowly in the vast darkness beyond the reinforced viewports. 300 warships flanked his position, arranged in perfect attack formation. Each vessel bristled with plasma cannons and quantum torpedoes that had reduced countless worlds to molten glass. The Terran homeworld appeared deceptively peaceful from this distance, wrapped in white clouds and gleaming with reflected sunlight from its vast oceans. The tactical officer, a younger member of the Krathan species with scales that shifted from green to purple with excitement, approached with measured steps. His voice carried the confidence of someone who had never known defeat. The energy barrier surrounding this system has completely dissipated, High Admiral. Our path to the planet is clear, no defensive structures detected within their orbital range. Their most advanced satellites appear to be simple communication relays and weather monitoring stations. Korthax allowed himself a rare display of satisfaction, his mandibles clicking in anticipation. The ancient barrier that had surrounded Earth's solar system for over a century had finally fallen. The old galactic concordat that had installed it was nothing but dust and forgotten treaties now. The new order demanded resources, and Earth possessed them in abundance. Water, organic compounds, rare minerals, and most importantly, a population that could serve as laborers for the Dominion's expanding empire. The humans had been studied extensively through long-range observations. They still relied on chemical propulsion for most of their spacecraft. Their weapons were projectile-based, using explosive compounds that would barely scratch the paint on a Dominion shut. They fought wars among themselves with tanks and aircraft that belonged in museums. Intelligence reports suggested they had only recently begun experimenting with fusion power, a technology the Dominion had mastered millennia ago. "Begin the harvest protocol," Korthax commanded, his voice resonating through the bridge. "Target their major population centers first. We will give them one opportunity to surrender before we commence orbital bombardment. Send the standard submission demands to their communication frequencies." As his communications officer began transmitting the ultimatum, something unexpected happened. Every sensor on every ship in the Dominion fleet suddenly erupted in warning signals. The tactical displays, which had shown empty space moments before, now revealed hundreds of contact points emerging throughout the solar system. Ships materialized from behind asteroids, rose from the dark sides of moons, and seemed to simply appear from the void itself. Korthax felt his confidence waver for the first time in decades. These were not the primitive vessels their intelligence had predicted. The human ships were angular and predatory, constructed from materials that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. They moved with a fluid grace that defied conventional physics, accelerating and changing direction in ways that should have torn any vessel apart. Energy readings from their power cores exceeded anything in the Dominion database. The main communication screen activated without prompting, displaying a human figure in a black uniform with silver insignia. The woman appeared middle-aged by human standards, with steel-gray hair and eyes that held an unsettling calmness. She spoke in perfect Krathan, which should have been impossible. No human had ever encountered their language before this moment. "High Admiral Korthax of the Dominion Expeditionary Force," she began, her tone professional, but carrying an undertone of something Korthax could not quite identify. "I am Fleet Marshal Victoria Reeves of the Terran Defense Initiative. You have entered our sovereign space with hostile intent. This represents a fundamental misunderstanding of the situation you now find yourself in." Korthax struggled to maintain his composure. The appearance of advanced human vessels was shocking enough, but this human knowing his name and speaking his language perfectly was deeply disturbing. His intelligence network had failed catastrophically, but he still commanded 300 of the most powerful warships in known space. "Your ships are impressive for a species we believe to be primitive," Korthax responded, attempting to project strength he no longer entirely felt. "However, you are vastly outnumbered. Surrender now and your people will be treated according to Dominion law. Resist, and we will reduce your world to ash." Fleet Marshal Reeves tilted her head slightly, an expression that might have been amusement crossing her features. "High Admiral, you proceed from a false assumption. You believe the barrier that surrounded our system was a prison. You are incorrect. It was camouflage, one that we maintained deliberately while we prepared for this exact scenario." The tactical display showed more human ships appearing. The count passed 500, then 800, then exceeded 1,000. Each vessel radiated power size. Natures that made Korthax's dreadnoughts look like cargo haulers. They moved into complex formations that surrounded the Dominion fleet from every angle, including above and below the solar plane. "Your species has been observing us for 107 years, Reeves continued. "You saw what we wanted you to see: primitive rockets, chemical weapons, internal conflicts, a species not worth the effort of conquest until resources became scarce enough to justify the operation. We counted on your arrogance, your assumption that technological development follows a predictable path." Korthax felt his scales beginning to change color involuntarily, a sign of deep distress he had not experienced since his youth. The human ships were not just numerous and advanced. They moved with a coordination that suggested either a hive mind or artificial intelligence systems far beyond anything the Dominion possessed. Weapon ports opened along their hulls, revealing technology that his sensors could not even properly analyze. "You see, High Admiral, humans have a peculiar trait. When we know we are being watched, we become very good at deception. Every war we fought, every failure you observed, every limitation we displayed was carefully orchestrated theater. We knew the barrier would eventually fall. We knew someone would come, so we prepared a surprise." The space around the Dominion fleet began to shimmer. Korthax realized with growing horror that what he had thought was empty void was actually filled with cloaked human vessels. They had been surrounded from the moment they entered the system. The 1,000 ships he could see were only the ones the humans were choosing to reveal. "This is impossible," Korthax said, his voice losing its commanding tone. "Our intelligence network is the finest in the galaxy. We have observers throughout known space. How could you have built this fleet without our knowledge?" Reeves smiled, and Korthax finally identified the undertone in her voice. It was pity. "High Admiral, you observed our planet from outside the barrier. You saw our broadcasts, our internet, our public communications. But you never saw our underground cities on Mars, our shipyards in the asteroid belt, our research stations on moons you thought were barren rock. We have been building this fleet for 60 years, training generations of humans for this moment." The human ships began to pulse with a synchronized energy pattern that made every alarm on Korthax's bridge scream warnings. Whatever weapon systems they possessed were charging to full power. The Dominion fleet's vaunted shields, which had never failed in 1,000 battles, began to fluctuate under some form of quantum interference. The long deception. 60 years before Korthax's fleet arrived at Earth's doorstep, Professor James Chen had stood in a secret facility buried 2 kilometers beneath the Antarctic ice. He was one of 12 scientists summoned to an emergency meeting that would reshape human civilization. The room was sparse, containing only a conference table and a holographic projector that displayed an image that had changed everything. The barrier had appeared overnight, a shimmering wall of energy that enclosed the entire solar system. World leaders had publicly expressed outrage and confusion, demanding answers from the scientific community. Media outlets had spawned countless theories ranging from divine intervention to alien quarantine. But in this room, far from public view, the real work had begun. Chen remembered the words of General Patricia Hayes, who had led that first meeting with military precision despite the chaos above. "The barrier is composed of quantum-locked particles maintained by generators we cannot locate," Hayes had explained to the assembled group. "It blocks all matter and most forms of energy from passing through in either direction. However, certain quantum frequencies can penetrate from inside to outside. We can observe what lies beyond, though we cannot communicate or travel there." Chen had been the first to grasp the implications. If we can observe them, we can learn from them. We can study their technology, their languages, their military tactics. The barrier they intended as a prison could become our greatest intelligence-gathering tool. That realization had sparked the most ambitious project in human history. While the public face of humanity continued its normal activities, a shadow civilization had emerged. Every nation on Earth had contributed resources to what became known as Project Parallax. Entire industries had been created in secret, hidden beneath the surface of planets and moons throughout the solar system. The genius of the deception lay in its simplicity. Humans had continued to launch chemical rockets and build space stations using publicly visible technology. They had fought limited wars with conventional weapons, maintaining the illusion of a species struggling with basic spaceflight. Meanwhile, in facilities hidden from any external observation, humanity had reverse-engineered alien technology simply by watching it in use. Dr. Sarah Kim, a quantum physicist who had joined the project in its third year, had made the breakthrough that changed everything. By analyzing the quantum signatures of passing alien vessels, she had discovered the principles behind faster-than-light travel. The mathematics were elegant once understood, but implementing them required materials and energy sources Earth did not naturally possess. The solution had come from an unexpected source. The barrier itself, intended to imprison humanity, leaked energy that could be harvested. Mining operations on the dark side of the moon, invisible to external observers, had collected this energy for decades. Combined with materials synthesized using techniques learned from observing alien manufacturing processes, humanity had built its first FTL-capable vessel in absolute secrecy. The test flight had been conducted entirely within the solar system, using short jumps between hidden facilities. Captain Marcus Thompson, who would later command one of Earth's first revealed warships, had described the experience in his classified report. "The universe bent around us," he had written. "Space itself became fluid, responsive to our will. We had stolen the fire of the gods, and they never knew." As the years had passed, humanity's secret fleet had grown. Each ship had been designed not just to match alien technology, but to exceed it. Human creativity, unbound by the assumptions and traditions that limited other species, had produced innovations that should have taken millennia to develop. Artificial intelligence systems that could predict enemy tactics with stunning accuracy. Weapons that manipulated fundamental forces in ways that violated what other species considered possible. Shields that existed partially outside normal spacetime, making them effectively impervious to conventional attacks. Admiral Chen, James's daughter, who had followed him into the project, had overseen the military training programs. Every human who joined the secret fleet had undergone psychological conditioning to prepare them for first contact. They had studied hundreds of alien species, learning their languages, their cultures, their strengths and weaknesses. Virtual reality simulations had allowed them to fight thousands of battles against every conceivable opponent. The social engineering aspect had been equally crucial. Earth's governments had maintained the appearance of division and conflict while secretly coordinating every aspect of the deception. Wars had been carefully orchestrated to appear genuine while causing minimal actual damage. Technological advancement had been deliberately slowed in public view while racing ahead in secret. The entire planet had become a stage, with 7 billion actors playing their parts. Director Maria Santos, who had coordinated the project for its final 2 decades, had often remarked on the psychological toll of the deception. "We were asking humanity to live a lie," she had said in one classified briefing, "to pretend to be less than we were, to hide our true potential from the universe. But every person who knew the truth understood what was at stake. We were not just building a fleet, we were preparing for the moment when humanity would reveal itself as a major galactic power." The preparation had extended beyond military considerations. Linguists had decoded dozens of alien languages. Anthropologists had studied alien cultures and predicted their reactions to various scenarios. Economists had modeled the impact of humanity's emergence on galactic trade. Diplomats had prepared negotiation strategies for every major spacefaring civilization. Earth had become a coiled spring, compressed and ready to release its energy at the perfect moment. When long-range sensors had detected the collapse of the galactic concordat that had erected the barrier, humanity had known their moment was approaching. The barrier's power source, maintained by a civilization that no longer existed, had begun to fail. Earth's leadership had made the calculated decision to allow it to collapse naturally rather than destroy it themselves. Let potential invaders think they had found helpless prey. 10 years before Korthax's arrival, Fleet Marshal Victoria Reeves had been appointed to lead Earth's revealed forces. She had spent those years studying every known military commander in the galaxy, learning their tactics, their psychological profiles, their strengths and weaknesses. When long-range sensors had detected Korthax's fleet approaching, she had known exactly who she would be facing. The High Admiral's reputation for overwhelming force and quick victories had preceded him. He would expect fear and surrender. Instead, he would find something far more dangerous. The final preparations had been made in the days before the Dominion fleet arrived. Hidden ships had moved into position throughout the solar system. Weapon systems that had never been fired in anger had been charged and calibrated. Millions of humans who had trained in secret for this moment had taken their positions. The greatest deception in human history had been about to end, and the greatest revelation about to begin. As Reeves had taken her position on the bridge of humanity's flagship, the UTS Prometheus, she had reflected on the journey that had brought them to this point. 60 years of preparation, of sacrifice, of living a lie to protect a greater truth. Humanity was not the primitive species the galaxy believed them to be. They were something far more dangerous. A species that had learned from everyone while revealing nothing, that had compressed centuries of advancement into decades, that had turned imprisonment into opportunity. The moment the Dominion fleet had crossed into the solar system, every human who knew the truth had felt the same thought. The masquerade was over. It was time for humanity to show the galaxy what happened when you backed an innovative, adaptable, and determined species into a corner. The Shadow Gate had not just been released. It had been shattered, and from its ruins, humanity would emerge as a force that would reshape the galaxy forever.